Welcome to Live DAF, your online DAF Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem and welcome back to today's DAF, Bava Basra DAF Chaf Dalet. We are holding 3 lines off the top of the Amud. Amar Abaye. Abaye will come now in support of Rabbi Chanina's concept. Yesterday we learned Rabbi Chanina presents an interesting equation. Let's say a person's faced with two competing considerations. On the one hand, you have Roiv, the majority factor, which is a din Torah, Achrei Rabim Lahatos. We learned that just as we follow the majority view in the Beis Din, likewise, anytime we are faced with a majority versus a minority, we follow the Roiv to determine the situation, the status going forward. On the other hand, we have Karev, proximity, closeness. Right? So let's say it's the bird found on the road. Most likely it came from the closest birdhouse, but the other one is more populated, more chances that it originated from there. So you're faced with Roiv versus Karev. Rabbi Chanina says, guess which one wins? Roiv prevails. Roiv is stronger. Roiv confirms. It verifies the reality. Amar Abaye, says the Gemara, I'll find you a similar situation where, when faced with Roiv versus Karev, Roiv prevails. Afanana metanina. We have the halacha regarding the dam of an isha. An isha sees an emission of dam, a blood flow. It can originate from a source which produces dam tameh, which is more likely, more natural. And then there is an option that would make it tahar if it came from a different location. So the halacha says like this: Dam shenimtza beproizdar, isha discovers dam in the channel, sveikei tameh, even though you don't know whether it's dam nida, which is tameh, or other types of dam. We say it's tameh sheches kasei min hamakar. It is presumed to have originated in the standard source, the womb, where dam tameh is produced. Va'afagav de'ika aliyah, even though there's that upper chamber, the makarva, which is closer to this channel where you found the dam. So you have closeness, which would produce a tahar result, versus Raiv, the womb which produces more dam, which is tameh. What do? We opt for the second option, Raiv. The majority wins. Amalei Rava. So Rava responds to Abaye, no, you can't compare that to our discussion. Because there it's not only Raiv, the blood coming from the womb. It's not just more in terms of quantity. Umatzi. It's also more common. It's part of the woman's natural cycle. Commerce. So that's what you're referring to? That double factor, of course, prevails. That's not a regular Raiv. Raiv umatzi lekalim anda amar. Nobody would dispute that when you have a Raiv plus the matzoi factor. That we would not prefer that. Of course, we do. In fact, we find the same halacha in a brayso. Tani Reb Chia, dam animtza beproizdar. Isha finds this dam. Chayavin alav al bias midrash. We assume that she's tamei, and if she enters the Beis Hamikdash, there is an absolute liability. We don't say it's unknown. It's a suffix. Right? You have to bring a korban. V'sarfen alavas truma. If she comes into contact with truma, we don't say, well, it's a suffix. We're not sure. We're not going to burn it. We burn it. There are 3 halachas, 3 concepts that can be deduced from Rabbi Chia's halacha that we just learned. Number 1, shmamina, roiv v'karev. You're faced with competing entities, conflicting factors. Roiv v'karev. What do? Halechacha roiv. We follow the roiv. We say the dam is most likely dam tameh. Ushmamina, the second point, ruba d'oraisa. Whenever we follow roiv, it's minat Torah. It's not just midrabanan. The fact is we rely on this roiv factor to bring a korban upon entering the Beis Hamikdash b'tumah, like we just mentioned. And thirdly, ushmamina isa l'Rab Zera. We hold the Rab Zera. The Rab Zera, he's speaking about a case where a person finds a chunk of meat in the street. Most stores are kosher meat. One store is non-kosher. We say, most likely it originated in the kosher store, it's kosher. Because the roiv determines. That applies even if the gates of the province, so to speak, are locked up, meaning no meat is being imported from out of this area, which would perhaps generate another roiv factor in your favor. If most meat out there is kosher. No, we're confined to our area. We're not importing meat. You only have one roiv factor, the local businesses in this town, which are roiv okay. That's enough, that's sufficient to make it kosher. Rashi says, because at times we find, let's say in Ksubais, the Gemara speaks about a double roiv. You have to have two majority factors. No, even if it's just one roiv, it's enough. How do we know? From the story of the Isha with the Dam. There's only one roiv factor. The Isha situation where she only has one roiv element is like the case where the Medina is locked up. You don't have any additional roiv factors. And still, still and all, Kazlina Basaruba. We follow the roiv element, and that determines her status. Asks the Gemara, hold it, who's speaking? Rava. But just a minute ago, Rava told us, in response to Abaye attempting to bring a raya from this halach of Damnida, that no, it's incomparable. There it's roiv plus matzah, it's more common, it's more likely, it's part of her natural cycle. And perhaps that's why we're swayed. Rava just told us, nobody in the world would dispute that you follow the roiv and the matzah. So it's not just a roiv. And here Rav is saying, we learn the idea of roiv overwhelms the karev, not just roiv. There's an enhanced roiv here, it's roiv and matzah. He apparently Rav disregarded that initial notion, and it's not because of the matzah factor, rather it's the roiv that determines, and only the roiv, and therefore we see that roiv over karev, roiv prevails. So in conclusion, Rabbi Chanina says when we're faced with conflicting factors, roiv on the one hand and karev on the other, we follow the roiv. Abaye attempted to bring a raya from the standard halacha of dam that an isha finds in an unknown area, source unknown. It could have come from the womb, which produces dam tummy. Could have come from the aliyah, which produces dam tar. We say it's tamei, roiv wins. Tomorrow comes another discussion regarding a similar halacha. Chavis shetzafa benar. Person discovers a barrel of wine floating in the river. Question is it kosher or non-kosher? Is it Jewish wine or not? Amar Rav, well, Nimtzis Keneged Ir Sheruba Yisrael. If you find it opposite a town which is mostly inhabited by Yisrael, and we assume it was Yiddish wine, Muteris, you can drink it. Keneged Ir Sheruba Nachra Masura. If you found it opposite a city full of Goyim, you assume it's from there. Karev. Kurva, closeness, proximity is what determines. Shmuel Amar, Afilu Nimtzis Keneged Ir Sheruba Yisrael Asura. Shmuel disagrees. Even if it was found right near the Jewish town, it's Asur because maybe it floated down from somewhere else. And most of the world out there produces non-kosher wine. Most Agayim, Amar Mahid, the Kara, maybe from this town up there, Asya, it floated down. So Rav looks at the local town, Shmuel looks at the world at large. No, it would appear that this machlekes revolves around Rabbi Chanina's concept. Because here you have a karev factor, location factor, right near the city. That's Rav's opinion. Shmuel says no. It could have floated from anywhere. And roiv, wine out there is no good. Damar is like the Rabbi Chanina. Shmuel works with Rabbi Chanina. Roiv is the prevailing factor. Umar and Rav disagrees. Leslie, the Rabbi Chanina, he doesn't hold to that. Karev is more paramount. Loi, says the Gemara, no, perhaps not. The Kuli Almo is the Rabbi Chanina. Perhaps everybody would theoretically go with Rabbi Chanina. Roiv is a stronger factor. So theoretically, the wine could have floated from anywhere. Could have floated from another town upstream, which is Goyim. Machlekes around this barrel of wine is based on a different type of question. Practically, shall we even suggest that it came from elsewhere? You found this barrel floating right here. How likely is it that it came from another town upstream, full of Goyim? The Mar Savar, Rav holds, it's unlikely. It's impractical. Im Isa, if it was so, the Mahai the Kara Asad, it came from that town, the Kara. Akuli, the obstacles in this river, Upshuria, the snow melt, where there's very shallow water. Have a matbila. It would have gotten stuck there and it would have sunk. It never would have successfully made it all the way down here. The fact that it's here indicates that it came from a local town. Local town Ayudin, it's okay. Umar Savar, Shmuel says you never know. Maybe it was dropped right in the middle of the raging river and it came floating down. Kharifa de Nahara. Maybe it was dropped into the strong point of the river, the deep, rushing, gushing part of the river. And that's how it successfully traveled down to this area. Kharifa de Nahara Nakat grabbed it v'asay and brought it down. We have another story. We found this pitcher of wine. It was located inside a vineyard which produced erla fruit. It was a fresh, young vineyard. Question is, were local grapes used to produce this wine, in which case it's asr, or shall we assume that it was brought from elsewhere? And Rav out there is okay. I guess it was a Jewish area. Says the Gemara, what happened? Shai Ravina allowed them to drink it. Is it because he held like Rabbi Chanina? That if Rav is in your favor, we override the karev, the close proximity location factor, which is not in your favor, in this case because it's Arla. No, says the Gemara, Shani Hasam, here it's very different. Because if in fact this wine was produced from grapes stolen locally in this vineyard, nobody would deposit stolen goods inside this vineyard where the goods were stolen from, right? Nobody would hide it in its actual place. Which allows us to conclude that in fact it came from elsewhere, which is mostly okay. That only pertains to a case where you found wine. So you wouldn't go produce the wine and put it back in the same place that you crime scene, right? But if you found some grapes, perhaps that fellow grabbed some grapes and quickly hid it. He, heard some noises and he just put it down temporarily. So it would make sense that it was sourced in the local vineyard, which is Arla. Once again, we have these containers of wine. We found amongst the vines. Some say Kupaya was the name of the town. In any case, the vineyard belonged to a Yisrael. Can we drink this wine or not? Shavin and Rav allowed them to drink it. Why? We assume because of location, despite the fact that Rav out there were not kosher. Leima loy savalo Rabbi Chanina. He doesn't hold the Rabbi Chanina. Says the Gemara, no, Shani Hasam here was very different. Because most of the wine supply in the area were Yisrael supply and were kosher. The Ruba de Shefuchai, most of the bottles, most of the wine producers in the area of Yisrael and were Yisrael. So we have no concerns about this wine. But that only pertains to large sized containers, which we assume were produced for commercial purposes and produced by the local Jewish wine bottlers. Aval Zutri, but if you have small containers, maybe that was brought along by a traveler. A canteen that a Goyish traveler brought from elsewhere. Or we can speculate it was dropped by a passerby. And most people out there are Goyim. But let's say you find a small container, which is problematic on its own, but the saving grace is that it was found with large containers, along a large shipment of containers. So in this case, you can say it's still good. You know why? Even though it doesn't have that commercial presentation, but avruri, havamanche, maybe it was part of a commercial shipment, and they needed a small container for balancing purposes, to balance out this large load. So we assume that it was produced by Yisraelim and kosher. So let's summarize again. We have Roiv versus Karev. Rabbi Chanina says we follow the Roiv. We brought a Roiv from Dam Nida, where it's Tameh, despite the fact that the Karev factor would make it okay. No, Roiv is Tameh, and therefore we consider it to be Tameh. We had the story of the barrel found on the river, Machlekes Rav and Shmuel, which turned out to be a practical Machlekes. whether or not we speculate that it flowed down, that it traveled down from upstream. We have a story of the barrel found in the vineyard. And the final story as well of this ziki, this container, this leather pouch, right, with wine. Again, we umatir it because of the assumption that it was wine produced by Yisrael. Says the Mishnah, you want to plant a tree near a city, keep it 25 amma away. Explains Rashi, for aesthetic purposes. It's nicer looking to the city when you have this sort of clear area, this clearance around the city, which sort of frames the city. So that's the halacha, the bylaw, 25 amma distance from the city. If you have a real entangled type of tree with lots of leaves, carob tree, a shikma tree, Rashi says, anfeim rabim, due to their large size and lots of branches, you need more than just 25 amma, 50 amma, 50 amma. Abba Shaul Eimer, guess what? Kol ilan strak, any non-fruit bearing tree, Rashi says, it's genayhu le'ir, it's not really so pretty, and therefore 50 amma, keep it 50 amma away. So you have to chop the tree if it was too close. But does the tree owner get compensated? Well, it depends. The city came first. He had no right to put it there. He must remove the tree. Nobody pays him for it. If the tree came first, the city still has a right to demand the tree's removal, but he has to be compensated for it. Let's say we're not sure who came first. So firstly, the tree is removed. In terms of payment, well, he has to prove his case. Otherwise, nobody will pay him for it. My timer says, why do we have to keep the tree away from town? For aesthetic purposes. Asks the Gemara, don't we have another more basic reason, which is based on the Chumash? Don't you know the halacha? Right? Why don't we just come from the halacha? The ein oisen sadeh migrash, v'lo migrash sadeh. This is the halacha by the Arei HaLevim. The city is granted to the Levim and Eretz Yisrael. The pasuk says the first 1,000 amma strip of land around the city has to be migrash, an open, vacant lot, to give that city its exposure, to frame the city, right, for aesthetic purposes. And then comes sada, past that, the next 1,000 ammas for planting, for purposes, right? So we're not allowed to mix up, switch designations. First 1,000 is meant to be a migrash, then comes a sada. You can't switch that, right? So why don't we just come to that point? Why don't we just source this halacha in that concept? The ein oisin sada migrash, v'lo migrash sada. We're not meant to switch a sada for a migrash or migrash and a sada. So the first section near town is meant to be empty, rather than planted. Let that be the reason of the Mishnah. Leitzricha says the Gemara must be the Rabbi Lezer. We're going to Rabbi Lezer. The Amar who says, yeah, that was the special regulation that the Torah provided for the Levium cities in Eretz Yisrael, but regular cities don't have that restriction. Typically, you can do what you want. Oisen sada, migrash, the planted area can be left empty. Migrash sada, the empty area can be planted. So according to him, hacha, that's why we have to explain. We don't allow planting, at least within this first little section, to enhance the city's presence. But according to Rabban who say, whether it's a city granted to the Levium or any city in Eretz Yisrael, the first 1,000 amma is meant to be left vacant. Well, Hanimil is right. That means to say you're not meant to plant seeds, plants within that first 1,000 amma. That doesn't look. That's not what the Torah wanted. Aval ilon is avdinon. But trees, yeah, there's no restriction on planting trees within the first 1,000 amma. That adds, that enhances. But here now, Mishnah was saying, nevertheless, first section, 25 amma, that should be left completely empty. Asks the Gemara, Umar Taimra, the Shani ben Zraim Leilanis, who's to say that we should make this distinction between plants and trees? Why are trees better than plants? First 1,000 amma can't have any plants, but can have trees. Why? The answer is yeah. Trees are shade providers. Trees make for a pleasant, functional area that's suitable for personal use, rather than just a farm. It's not a farm. It's a tree area which provides for the residents, and that we do allow in the first 1,000 amma around the city. Minus this first little section as we're discussing here. The Sanya, as we learn a Braisa, relating to a totally different halacha. This is a halacha that pertains to Shabbos. In Shabbos we have a concept called a karfif, an enclosure which is not really a residential enclosure, a non-residential enclosure, a storage area, let's say. Can we carry in that area? Yoiser and Beis Hasayim, if it's too big, more than 2 sa'ah, Rashi says, 2 sa'ah is the shear of the yard around the Mishkan, 100 amma by 50 amma. Chachamim determine that size to be the maximum allowable size in a non-residential enclosure to allow carrying within it. It still resembles a Rosh Hashanah, a private domain. It doesn't look like a street, but if it's bigger than that, it no longer has that residential taste to it, and you shouldn't be carrying in it. Less people think you can carry, in the middle of nowhere. Now, if it was enclosed for residential purposes, let's say, it's used in a residential context, let's say it's full of trees, right? So it's a pleasant area where you hang out, you spend time, it has a residential flavor to it, then size is not an issue. Karfif, you're using Beis Hasayim. Let's say you have this karfif, this enclosure, very big, bigger than the allowable size, more than 2 sa'ah, shukav ladira. And it was enclosed for living purposes, for residential purposes. So far so good, you can carry it. Nizra ruba, but now let's say it was planted, most of it was turned into a farm. Harikagina, v'asur, it's like a garden, you can't carry it in anymore. It doesn't have that, lost that residential status. But imnita ruba, let's say you planted much trees in it. It's mostly full of trees, that's okay. Trees are considered residential. Hariyuk a chatzar, umut is called like a chatzar. You can carry in it. So you see that trees are considered residential entities. Right? They allow for shade providers, allow for picnicking. It's like an extension of the residential area. So this type of park, so to speak, is called hukaf ladira, and likewise by us. Around the city, you're not meant to turn into a farm or trees. Great. Minus that first 25 amma section, which is required for the noya ha'ir to add aesthetic enhancement to the city. If the city came first, right? So he has the tree right near the city came first, he shouldn't have done that, and he loses the tree without compensation. Asks the Gemara, we have a similar halacha. By planting a tree near a pit, you shouldn't be planting a tree in close proximity to your neighbor's well. If he did so, he can force you to remove it, and he has to compensate you. So despite the fact that he came first, he still has to pay you for that loss. So why is it that in this situation the tree must be removed without compensation? Amrav Kahana, really he should be paid for that tree, but Kidru Dvei Shutfi, it's a mashal, a pot, a kadera owned by partners, nobody's looking after it. Because each fellow is relying on his friend to take care of it. It's never going to be properly heated. It's never going to be hot or cold. It's going to be sort of lukewarm because nobody takes personal responsibility. It's not hot, it's not cold. Rashi explains here as well. You're dealing with the public, the city. If he's going to insist on getting paid for his lost tree, by the time people in the city get around to paying him for that tree, nobody's going to take responsibility. You pay. So the tree's just going to stay there. And Rashi says, "Ve'enzu teferes Eretz Yisrael," interferes with the aesthetics of Eretz Yisrael. Therefore, remove the tree. We don't obligate them to pay you for it. Asks the Gemara, 1 second. Don't we have a more simple answer to this question? You know why they're not paying him? Umay kushi. What's the question? Dilma Shani Hezeka derabim. Here you're encroaching on the public. It's very different. It's more serious. Mezeka diyacha than the tree near your neighbor's pit, which is just affecting one private individual. So maybe over here, the Chacham will more machmer. And they don't allow you to get compensated. You're right. This question that we've just asked is simply answered by the fact that it's a rabbim, that they don't owe you compensation. The question that we had was on the next part of the mission. Let's say the tree came first. He must remove the tree. It gets compensated. In that order. First remove the tree and then you send the bill. Why? The fellow can say, look, pay me first. Until I see money, I don't want to remove my tree. Well, maybe you can tell the B'nai Ha'ir, Havili Varesha Dmei, first pay me for the tree, then I'll remove it. That's a good question. On that, Rav Kahana says, well, it's never going to happen otherwise. If you're going to wait for the people to pay you, it's not going to happen. So first the Chacham say, remove the tree, then try to get compensated. As opposed to the case of the boyer, over there actually says that he can't even ask him to remove the tree. Okay, it's a totally different halacha. Fine. Maishna says the Gemara, Savik Zekodam, Savik Zekodam, Koitzit Vein Rishkin Dam. Mishnah concludes, let's say we're not sure who came first. So first thing, Koitzit. And then, money, well, until you prove your case, you can't demand reimbursement. Asks the Gemara, but now if we compare it to the case of the tree near the bar, you'll see a stark contrast. Maishna be bar, why is it different than by the bar? If you came first, before the bar, the tree stays. The Amrs we say loyo because they can't remove it. Sorry, and also even by suffix. That's the point. By suffix, we're not sure who came first, you can't remove the tree. If the bar came first, yeah, the tree goes. But if we're not sure, the tree stays. And here we say, even if we're not sure who came first, the tree or the city, the tree goes. Says the Gemara, Asam Devade Lav Lamekatz Koi. Difference is like this. In the case of the bar, let's just organize things. In the case of the bar, if you put a tree first, the tree stays. If the bar came first, the tree goes and you get compensated. If we're not sure, the tree stays. You know why? Hasam, the vade lav lamekatz koi. Over there, if we would know that the tree came first, it would not go. You wouldn't remove the tree. So likewise, if it's a suffix, you can't force them to remove the tree. How about over here? The vade lamekatz koi here, umu machmer. Because it affects the public and all that, right? So here, even if the tree came first, he has to remove the tree. He can get compensated. The tree goes. So we break it down. Two separate questions. Do the tree stay or the tree goes? Do you get compensated? Two separate things. So in terms of the first question, status of the tree, either way the tree goes. So you got to remove the tree. You can't insist. You can't wait. I'm waiting with the tree until I get... No. There's one question. Tree, then another question is compensation. Here. Even if the tree was first, it goes. So Sveikanami, Amrinale kites. So even if we're not sure, he has to still remove the tree. And in terms of reimbursement, well, that's the next question. Amrinale will tell him, I see Raya Vishkoil, sure. Confirm that you were first and you got paid. Until that happens, you're stuck without payment. So we sort of break it apart. Two separate factors to deal with. Tree goes, money stays. Okay, so in summation, the tree should be at least 25 amma from the city. If the city came first, it's removed without compensation. Otherwise, with compensation. If you're not sure what happened, it's removed without compensation. Says the Mishnah. You must keep your gerin kavua, your permanent threshing area and winnowing area, 50 amma from the city. The Gemara will explain because of the chaff that will, affect the city and affect its, air quality. Likewise, a person should not establish a goyren in his own property unless he has enough space around it to allow for that buffer zone between himself and his neighbors. 50 amma per side. Umarchik, says the Mishnah, likewise, you should remove the goyren Keep it away from his neighbor's plants, from his empty plowed field, lest he cause any harm. Asked the Gemara. First we speak about 50 amma distance, then at the end we sort of no longer speak about exact numbers. Just keep it away so that it doesn't harm him. Why are we sort of deviating from the 50 amma rule? You're right. It's describing a different type of situation. Seifa ason the Gerin sheni kavua. The Reish is speaking about an established Gerin, a big one, an established one. So there, 50 amma is the minimum. But the Seifa is speaking about just a temporary Gerin. We give no numbers to that. Just make sure you keep reasonable distance. What's considered a nekavua? Is it a matter of size? Is it a matter of the amount of material being processed there is not big enough to require using a rachas, this winnowing fork. So that requires less concern, has less concern. Rashi says, no, we're not speaking about different cases. 50 amma is a set rule. And the Mishnah is just explaining, why do we have to have this setback? My time why? My time why do you need to pull back 50 amma? Lest it cause any harm, as explained in the second part of the Mishnah. So according to Abai, sometimes it's 50 amma, sometimes less. According to Rav Ashi, it makes no difference, it's always 50 amma. Meisveh comes a kasha on Abai. We have a Bryce, which uses similar language to the Mishnah, and still seems to work with a 50 amma absolute setback. Marchikin Gurin Kvo Mana'ir Chamisham Amma, right? Keep the Gurin away from the city, 50 amma. Ukashem Shemarchikim Mana'ir Chamisham Amma, just as you need a 50 amma setback from the city. Kach Marchikim Mitluav, Mekishuav, Matioisav, Venir Shachaveri. Same thing with your keeping your Gurin from your neighbor's farm, from his pumpkins, from his kshua, from his cucumbers, the of his plants, and his empty plowed field, chamishim amma, lest it cause any harm. So now, Bishlam Rav Ashi, according to Rav Ashi, it works out because 50 amma rule applies to all situations without differentiation. Ela Abaye kasha, according to Abaye, we seem to find no difference. It's always going to be 50 amma. And Abai told us it does depend on the size, right? On the permanence factor. And Taisus explains that the Brisa sort of echoes the Mishnah in its language. It uses the same term, Kadesh Yazik. Right? And the Brisa clearly uses that as a reason, Kadeh. I'm just explaining. It's always going to be 50 amma so that it doesn't cause any harm. So apparently that's the pshat in the Mishnah as well. It's always going to be 50 amma. Elabaya kasha, right, kasha. We'll leave it as a kasha, we have no answer to that. Asks the Gemara. Now, what is the concern here in this Brisa? We have different types of, right? B'shlemim, b'kshuv, midluav. I understand what's, concerning us with putting the gura near our neighbor's plants. The azal afka, because the chaff, the dust will go and travel over there, but asi bilibe, and get embedded in the hearts of his plants, inside his, umatzvile, and will damage it, will sort of burn it up. But what's wrong with an empty field? Matzvile, some say, means dry it up, right? We'll dry it up. But what's wrong with having this granary near a field which hasn't been planted? They used to plow and overturn the weeds and all that so that it dries up and dies. So it's not been processed yet. What's the concern there? It still can harm the soil, can damage the land. Some say Gol is animal waste. Basically, all this waste, all this will just pile up and trash the field and make it non-functional. Tesa says even though galal typically is used as fertilizer, but here it means it's overdoing the galal. Shekula galal, too much fertilizer is mazik. That explains the 50 amma setback. So let's summarize. We started with Raiv versus Karev. Rabbi Chanina says we go with the Raiv. We have several rayas and stories. We had the halacha of keeping the Elon from the city. Mishum Noye Ha'ir, all kinds of halachas regarding compensations. And finally, Marchikin is Ger and Kavua. Also, you need a setback, a 50 amma setback, to protect the city or the neighboring property. All the best to you and Haslachara.